In a state of shock, his grandmother called Vince's parents to inform them that she had just witnessed something unusual. His family managed to scrape together enough money to purchase a Gibson ES-335 electric guitar for Vince by the time he was 10. In 1967, that guitar was over $800, which is roughly $6,500 now. Furthermore, it was a declaration rather than merely a present. Vince was more than a little child with a pastime. He played music. His escape was music. Vince didn't snap when things at home grew difficult. He vanished inside his guitar. He played for 6 to 8 hours every day, often alone himself in the basement. Family members and friends remember hearing melancholy, poignant music reverberating through the walls. Later, his music instructor noted that Vince's playing had a deep, sorrowful sound that was much beyond his years. He avoided discussing pain. He made it into a tune. By high school, Vince had formed Mountain Smoke, a bluegrass band. On March 4, 1976, an extraordinary event occurred. They served as Kiss's opening act. Yes, Kiss, the rock monsters with makeup. The Oklahoma City Fairgrounds hosted the performance, and the audience was perplexed by a group of young people performing bluegrass. They desired leather and fire. They received banjos and fiddles instead. The audience jeered. They hurled mugs. Even shoes were thrown. Vince lost his temper. He stormed off stage after mooning the audience and flipping them off. It was unvarnished, humiliating, and unforgettable. The band broke up after that tumult. Vince persisted, nevertheless. He joined Bluegrass Alliance after relocating to Kentucky. By 1977, he was playing with a teenage Ricky Skaggs in a band called Boone Creek. The bluegrass scene was illuminated by the two of them. Despite their brief existence, the group's style, which combined traditional bluegrass with contemporary elements, contributed to the development of a new sound. His classroom was that 1983 tour. Cash's band was demanding, well-rehearsed, and tight. Both at home and on stage, Vince had to mature quickly. It was difficult to juggle fatherhood with late-night rehearsals and unpredictable income. But he became tougher, sharper, and more focused over those months in Nashville. In the meantime, his former bandmate from the Cherry Bombs, Tony Brown, was moving up the Nashville social ladder. Brown was in charge of A&R at RCA Records. By 1984, Vince was still on his mind. He started working hard behind the scenes because he thought Gill had something unique. Brown asked for whatever favor he could find in order to pitch Vince's demos to Joe Galante of RCA. His efforts were successful. Gill signed a solo contract with RCA at the beginning of 1984. Trust was more important than skill alone. Brown put his neck out to demonstrate that he was confident Gill could deliver. Vince took advantage of the opportunity. In February 1984, he released his first solo album, Turn Me Loose, a 6-song EP. The top 40 included 3 of the tracks. Number 34 was attained by Victim of Life's Circumstances. Although it wasn't a huge hit, it was sufficient to draw attention. Gill worked long hours recording with renowned session musicians at Woodland Studios in Nashville. Filler tracks were not what he wanted. He desired for every moment to matter. He performed with Pure Prairie League once more one evening. They gave him the job offer in a matter of hours. He said yes this time. The band's sound engineer, Jeff Reeder, recalled it vividly. He was dedicated to bluegrass, but we had seen him perform in 1976. We knew he was the one when he returned in 1978. As the new frontman, Vince Gill took over. He was singing more than that. He was playing any string instrument, including the guitar, mandolin, and violin. He was into a greater spotlight than ever before, at the age of 21. By 1979, the group was working at Criteria Studios in Miami to create their next album, Can't Hold Back. It would be their first studio album with Gill on board full-time, but their 8th overall. Everything changed when he was there. Something heartfelt and soft was imparted by his voice. He also began penning songs that combined pop tunes with a touch of rural tenderness. Michael Riley, a longtime member of the band, put it best. He was a welcome change. Although it wasn't a big hit, the album revitalized the band. And that was the start of something far more significant for Vince. Then 1980 arrived. Things blew up at that point. Let Me Love You Tonight, their biggest hit to date, was included in the band's Firing Up album. On the Billboard Hot 100, the song quickly rose to number 10. Gill's voice carried the entire song as he sung lead. It's almost interpreted as back by many people, I believe. Everything was Vince Gill's. The golden voice of country music, with 22 Grammys and 21 #1 songs. However, he did something in 2000 that made half of his admirers dislike him. Amy Grant was his wife. Both had recently separated from their husbands. It was referred to be adultery by the Christian Society. Their song was banned by radio stations. At his concerts, protesters carrying hate signs appeared. The health issues continue to arise 25 years later. The 67-year-old man who had it all is witnessing it disappear. On April 12, 1957, Vince Gill was born in Norman, Oklahoma, into a household where music and law met in the most peculiar way. In addition to being a federal judge, his father was a seasoned bluegrass musician who was proficient on the banjo, guitar, and harmonica. Judge Gill would occasionally return home from judicial sessions and join his wife Jiren, who also played the harmonica, in late-night jam sessions. Their music used to waft down the corridor while Vince lay in bed. The 1977 album by that band is now considered a cult favorite. People continue to discuss it as though they had unearthed hidden riches. Vince packed up once more later that year and headed west. After arriving in Los Angeles, he joined the band Sundance, which was fronted by Byron Berlin, a legendary fiddler. Berlin was no laughing matter. He had performed with the Flying Burrito Brothers and Bill Monroe. He was looking for perfection. Vince picked everything up quickly. They performed in one of LA's most famous venues, the Palomino Club, where they met icons like Linda Ronstadt and Emmylou Harris. After being jeered off stage less than a year earlier, Vince was suddenly sharing the stage alongside Grammy-winning artists. It takes a lot of guts to bounce back like that. Pure Prairie League was in disarray in September 1978. Larry Gosh Horn, their lead singer, has recently departed to form a new band with his brother. With no original members left, the group was fighting for its life. In an effort to locate someone who could continue the music, they started organizing auditions. At that point, Vince Gill, a young bluegrass musician, returned to their life. Gill and his band, Mountain Smoke, had performed as the opening act for Pure Prairie League in Oklahoma City 2 years prior, in 1976. They saw him right away. Even though he was only 19, his brilliance was evident. He was still passionate about bluegrass. Now, in 1978, he was performing with Sundance and Byron Berlin in Los Angeles. Those summer evenings when the sound of harmonas and guitars filled the streets are still a topic of conversation among the neighbors. Vince's soul was deeply impacted by this peculiar blend of porch-picking delight and courtroom solemnity. However, maturing wasn't simple. Vince has crossed eyes from birth. It was more than a small problem. 2 grueling procedures were necessary. His left eye continued to wander when he was agitated or exhausted even after that. He later acknowledged that he began wearing spectacles to conceal the eye that made him feel damaged. In addition to improving his vision, he was so frequently bullied by his peers as a child that he began to completely avoid people. Rather, he remained at home, engrossed with his guitar. He wasn't fleeing from reality. He was constructing a brand new one. Tragedy struck hard when Vince was 10 years old. Bob, his half-brother, was involved in a horrific vehicle accident on a wet roadway west of Oklahoma City. Once a gifted student and a gifted athlete, Bob suffered from brain injury that left him unable to even recall people's names. Bob required full-time care for more than 25 years. To cover it all, Judge Gill had to take on more legal work. Vince saw the strain cause his parents' marriage to fail. In 1993, Bob passed away due to a heart attack brought on by his injuries. Vince never got over that pain. He claimed that those experiences taught him what it was like to truly lose something years later. His melodies, which cause individuals to sob quietly in their cars, are a reflection of that sorrow. Vince picked up his grandmother's old acoustic guitar when he was 5 years old and began to attempt playing Old Shep. He learned the chords and started singing in half an hour without any instruction. That commitment was evident. Gill's EP made it clear that he was more than simply another upbeat country music artist. He was a serious performer who was prepared for larger venues. Things improved even further that year. Gill won the Academy of Country Music's award for Best New Male Vocalist on April 10, 1984. For a brief time, it appeared as though everything was finally coming together when he received his first significant prize. But it took time to become famous. The Things That Matter, his subsequent album, was released in 1985. It wasn't successful, but it was good. None of his singles reached the top 10 between 1984 and 1988. Gill continued to work and get better, but the spotlight remained just out his reach. That ACM honor served as a reminder, though. The industry was watching, he had the voice, and he was talented. Vince Gill was 32 years old, and on the verge of oblivion by 1989. RCA wasn't sure what to do with him because his records hadn't taken off. Tony Brown, however, was not finished yet. Brown, who is currently employed at MCA Records, made another audacious offer. He persuaded Gill to sign with the label. It was a risk. Brown thought Gill's best work was still to come, but most labels concentrated on up-and-coming artists. He provided him with a crew that understood him, a new sound, and more powerful songs. It was more than just a new contract. When you signed with MCA, it was a second opportunity. That opportunity quickly paid off. Gill published When I Call Your Name in October 1989. There was nothing else like it on the radio. Pop, rock, country, and even bluegrass were all combined together on the album. It was not trend following, it created its own. A traditional vibe was imparted by songs like Oklahoma Swing with Reba McEntire. Others leaned into a more subdued, sentimental feel, such as Never Knew Lonely. However, the true highlight was the title track. Gill's voice was as sharp as a piece of glass, unforgettable, painful, and pure. The variety of styles was praised by critics. It was played nonstop by fans. Nashville then began to pay notice once more. I Call Your Name created history rather than merely receiving airplay. On the Billboard Country chart, the track rose to number 2. Vince Gill was suddenly more than just a well-known musician. He made hits. The song won Single of the Year at the 1990 CMA Awards. Gill received his first Grammy for Best Male Country Vocal Performance a year later. In the end, the song that nearly failed to be released changed his life. The production, the emotion, and the vocals all came together perfectly at the precise moment. Gill was here. The album achieved platinum status in 1992. More than 1 million copies were sold. It was uncommon for an artist beyond 30 who hadn't yet achieved a big hit to achieve that level of success. There was more to the platinum accreditation than a number. It served as confirmation. His music was a hit on the radio. To hire him, concert promoters waited in line. The man who had previously struggled to find a gig suddenly rose to prominence as one of the most popular country music acts. His career was rewritten by that record, not merely saved. Gill didn't distance himself from other people despite his immense fame. He rose to prominence as a studio musician in Nashville. In addition to his guitar skills, big stars wanted him in the studio for his feel and harmonies. He collaborated with Reba once more, contributing guitar and vocals to her Sweet 16 album. He performed on Bluebird by Emmylou Harris. Interiors, Rosanne Cash's 1990 album, was influenced by him. In an unexpected turn of events, Bonnie Raitt invited him to appear on her 1991 album. Luck of the draw. Gill was able to seamlessly transition between rock, blues, and country music. The years 1992-1994 saw Vince Gill everywhere. Sold-out venues, award events, and country radio. His voice served as the era's theme music. He had 4 consecutive #1 hits in those 2 years alone. I Still Believe in You debuted in 1992. Then, in 1993, Don't Let Our Love Slip Away and One Last Chance. And in 1994, Trying to Get Over You. On the Billboard Hot Country charts, each single peaked at #1. Gill had discovered the ideal fusion of new school polish and old school country heart. Not by accident. Not only did I Still Believe in You reach the top of the charts, it resided there and was in the top 10 for 20 weeks. The move was a power move for country music. It was Gill's transformation from a well-respected artist to an unstoppable celebrity. By the decade's close, things began to change. His album, The Key, which was published in 1998, had a unique sound because it was unique. Every song was filled with unvarnished honesty, and it was about the end of his 17-year marriage to Janice Oliver. Songs like Kindly Keep It Country and The Key to Life took away the shine and revealed a man navigating change and loss. The record received widespread acclaim. Critics dubbed it his most audacious piece to date. It didn't have to, but it didn't sell as well as his previous records. It wasn't simply another hit. The Key. It marked a sea change, the end of his most significant chapter, and the beginning of something more intimate. However, Gill's personal life was having an impact on more than just his music. It was in the news. He wed Christian pop royalty, Amy Grant, in 2000. By then, she had won 6 Grammys and sold over 30 million albums. Both stars' admirers were in disbelief. In 1998, Gill had recently completed his divorce. In 1999, Grant and Gary Chapman were divorced. People were surprised by the timeline. Rumors of chemistry have surrounded the two, since they first met in 1993, when they were still married to other people. Both the Christian and country music communities were rocked when they eventually went public as a couple. Some admirers saw it as betrayal rather than only rumors. It was particularly difficult for Grant's fan base. For many years, she represented pure faith-based music. Churches and youth groups performed her tunes. She was more than just a vocalist. She was a symbol of spirituality. As a result, many of her Christian supporters turned against her after hearing of her divorce and subsequent marriage. Her music was even taken from some radio stations. Others expressed that they felt as though they were grieving for her soul. Something more profound was revealed by the pushback. When a religious leader dares to be human, the pedestal might become brittle. Then the past roared back in 2013. Vince Gill was supposed to play in Kansas City at the Kauffman Center. A number of protesters from the Westboro Baptist Church were outside the venue. They had blunt symptoms. God detests adultery. Vince Gill also took the wife of another man. Picketing wasn't all they were doing. Years after the incident, they were assaulting his marriage to Grant. The majority of famous people would have disregarded them. Gill didn't. Rather, he approached them directly. He addressed the demonstrators directly, remaining composed but firm. Gill didn't bat an eye when one of them yelled, "What are you doing with another man's wife? Don't you know divorce plus remarriage equals adultery? Jesus also spoke extensively about grace and forgiveness." He retorted, "You guys don't have any of that." The incident was captured on camera and quickly went viral. Supporters commended his bravery. His handling of hate with dignity and integrity was praised by others. Vince Gill and his wife, Amy Grant, had a cardiologist's visit in 2020. Strangely, both of them were marked for additional testing, even though it was supposed to be a regular visit for her. At that point, Gill learned that he had partial anomalous pulmonary venous return, or PAPVR, a rare cardiac defect. It affects less than 1% of people, and many are unaware of it. For decades, his heart had to work harder without his knowledge, because some of the veins in his lungs were pumping blood that was rich in oxygen to the wrong side of the heart. Sudden heart failure might have resulted from it. Somehow, though, he had managed to get by this time. Life dealt another blow a few weeks later. Gill and Amy required consecutive open-heart operations. Amy entered first, followed soon after by Gill. This occurred during the pandemic, when hospitals were refusing to let people in. Thus, they were recuperating alone rather than supporting one another. According to Gill, those were some of the most lonely times in his life. However, he claimed that it felt like a weight had been lifted for the brief minute he was permitted to see Amy. They persevered through a year of suffering together, quiet and procedures. Then tragedy struck once more in 2002. Amy lost control and fell while riding her bike close to a Nashville golf course. Her unconsciousness lasted for 10 minutes. She had a catastrophic brain injury when assistance arrived. After she experienced severe memory loss, physicians discovered a developing cyst in her throat. She required 5 hours of surgery to remove it because it was so bad. She lost her ability to sing after that. She joked that she felt inebriated even though she wasn't, and she had problems walking straight. But Amy, who never gave up, continued on, referring to herself as an old automobile that had been repainted and dented. And Vince was always by her side. Gill took time off from 3 major concerts in early 2023 because Amy needed him, not because he wanted to relax. It was difficult for her to heal after the throat surgery and the bike accident. According to Vince, it seemed as though they were constantly experiencing catastrophes. Nevertheless, he remained by her side, supported her during her darkest moments, and prioritized her recovery. His admirers lauded him, describing it as true love in action. But despite all, Gill struggled with his own health. Singing became unpleasant due to the development of polyps in his vocal cords. To continue doing what he loved, he had surgery and rehabilitation. After that, he developed persistent back discomfort that made it necessary for him to undergo physical therapy and alter his diet in order to function. He subsequently had to reduce his touring due to worsening arthritis. He didn't stop, though. He made adjustments, found methods to get around it, and continued. Then something unexpected happened. Joyce, a 75-year-old woman, made an innocuous remark on Vince Gill's Instagram in late 2022, just hoping he'll visit Boston as a fan. It was a nightmare that ensued. Fraudsters posing as Gill contacted her in private. They persuaded her that they were in love and transferred the conversation to Telegram. Joyce sent them over $450,000, her life savings, over the course of about a year. They informed her that he required money to settle an assault claim, that Amy had blocked his assets, and that Jill was going through a divorce. They pressed harder each time she paused. She even planned to move to be with him, because she thought they were married. Joyce's daughter made an attempt to halt it. Social workers did the same, but she had been totally duped by the con artists. The reality was invisible to her mind, which was already battling age and memory problems. The money was gone by the time the truth was revealed, leaving Joyce emotionally and financially devastated. At last, Vince Gill's squad took over. They issued a caution to the public, stating that anyone posing as Vince Gill online was not. His accounts were managed by experts. He would never send fans a private message. However, the harm had already been done by that point. There were other cases besides Joyce's. It was simply among the most devastating. Vince experienced yet another health scare in May 2025. He was admitted to the hospital this time due to kidney stones, which were extremely uncomfortable. He was forced to postpone performances in St. Louis and Birmingham. Although it had been frightening, his daughter Jenny assured followers that he was doing better. Fans realized that Jill, who was known for always showing up, had to take a backseat once more. They bombarded social media with messages and prayers, reminding everyone that the man behind the celebrity had experienced more than most. Nevertheless, Vince wasn't slowing down in spite of all these obstacles. He embarked on his largest summer tour in years in May 2025. This was no ordinary excursion. He left Oklahoma in 1975 to follow his ambitions, and it was the 50th anniversary of that departure. The tour would visit more than 30 towns, before concluding with 4 poignant evenings at Nashville's Ryman Auditorium, a venue Gill regards as sacrosanct. Even though he has played there more than 100 times, this solo stay was unique. It was a lap of victory. Vince Gill was more than simply a country music sensation by 2025. He had endured severe illness, outlasted fads, helped his wife through her worst hours, and still he went back to the stage with an open heart. His voice, mended and protected, remained as soulful as ever, and his gigs were packed. And he wasn't by himself. Gill put together an 8-piece band for this tour that included some of Nashville's top musicians, including Tom Bukovac on guitar, Wendy Motten with her booming voice, Jim Moose Brown on keys, and a long list of legendary musicians who had performed with the industry's biggest names. They were family, not only supporting actors. On stage, there was genuine chemistry. Like Jill had done for everyone around him over the past 3 years, they joked, traded solos, and encouraged one another.